Day in Woburn. I'm your host, Samantha Stone, and today we are going to talk a lot about education in our city. We've got some fabulous guests on to do that. We also have a special guest. We're going to wrap up our show talking to one of our candidates for mayor, Omar, and learn all about Omar's candidacy and what's important to him and his vision for the city. First up, welcome, Maureen.
Hi, Samantha. Great to be here.
I'm really excited that you're here. You're here from the Ed Foundation, and we're going to talk about galas. And I always think gala, and I think glitzy. So before we talk a little bit about the upcoming fundraiser, let's just remind our audience about the Ed Foundation and the important work that you do.
Yeah, great. The Ed Foundation was formed to increase private investment and community involvement in the Woburn Public Schools. And essentially what we do is raise funds and we gift it back to the schools to pay for projects and initiatives that cannot be covered by the school budget. So just last week, we gifted a little over $20,000 directly to Woburn educators through our Educator Grants Program. We fund Lexia for K through 3 students that are not reading at grade level. And this year, we're involved in funding a caring school community program at the district's middle schools. So essentially what we try to do is fill the gaps the best we can. Because public dollars just are not enough to help our educators address the needs of their students.
So such important work. Thank you for doing that. Tell us about this upcoming gala we have. I know it's the Country Club, which is always up for good food. Tell us a little bit about when it is and what people can expect.
Sure. So we're hosting a Gourmet Gala this year, and essentially it plugs a hole in our fundraising calendar because we're not hosting a Hall of Fame this year. So anyone holding out for the Hall of Fame will have to wait till 2024. And again, we wanted to showcase really the talents of Chef Suey at the Country Club, and he created a 4-course menu for us. A local wine purveyor is donating wine, so we're going to do a 4-course dinner with wine pairings. And then we put together a small auction of about a dozen items that include Red Sox Yankees tickets and Celtics tickets, and we have some vacation getaways to Orlando and St. Croix. And a few other things for people to bid on. And our goal is really to bring people together for a very nice evening, and all the proceeds are going to benefit our Educator Grants Program.
That is exciting.
I left off. The date is the 25th of March, so it's a couple weeks away. And again, it's at the Woburn Country Club, and the event starts at 6 p.m.
That's exciting. I'm really looking forward to going and enjoying all of that great food and such. For those who don't yet have tickets, how much are they and where can they get them?
So the tickets are $125 a piece, and they can get them online or print out a form from our website and mail in a check. And our website address is woburnedfoundation.org.
Fantastic. Maureen, thank you for joining us. I hope to see many of you there. It's a great cause, really important work. We know a lot of people in the community are excited to help support teachers and students and families, and these grants go a long way in helping do those things in our school. So hopefully you're going to raise a lot of money and do a lot of good work. I know people are going to ask, because you mentioned it, there's no Hall of Fame evening this year. Why did you decide not to do that?
When we started the Hall of Fame, the plan was to make it an every other year event. And that really just gives us time to solicit nominations from the community and to, really organize the committee and keep things on track. We wanted to make sure it was something that we could sustain, going forward. So we did move it to an every other year event. So 2024, May of 2024 is actually the date for the next induction.
Excellent. So definitely don't wait that long and look forward to it. Thank you so much for joining me, Maureen.
Thanks, Samantha. Take care.
Next up, Chris Kisiel's joining us. And although Chris wears many, many hats in our community today, you're wearing hat as chair of the school committee. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So you are, I think as of January, you can tell me what the actual dates were. You are chair of the school committee. You've obviously been a longtime member of the school committee. I think you might have held chair position in the past, correct?
Yes, I was chair. I actually don't remember the date, but it was a little while ago, probably 6 years into my school committee tenure. So.
Okay. So it has been, I imagine, a challenging few weeks. There's been a lot going on in our schools. From your perspective, what are some of the priorities that you want to make sure we're focused on in the coming weeks and months?
Well, we have our budget coming up. Actually, a presentation was made at the last meeting on the 1st of March. And as the last few years, having gone through COVID, of course, there's been a lot of emphasis on the mental health topics and kind of working with the classroom, not only teachers, but the paraprofessionals and the students, as well as the families. People have gone through, as everyone knows, a lot, and it reflects in the classrooms and in the students themselves, and again, with the staff. So our emphasis will be to kind of put as much as we can towards that, kind of helping out families and so on, and different programming that would make that happen.
Excellent. So you mentioned budget, and budget is top of mind. So we know the teacher contracts are negotiated and the salaries are set, but a lot of other things go into our budget for the year. Step us through what the process is, so the community understands what we do, the diligence that happens that goes into building this, what the moving pieces are, and where they can or should get involved.
Sure. Well, I mean, the administration works on this budget. It's obviously, it being presented soon, but it's an all-year process. Administration gets together with the school building principals, different categories, for what's important in each school and at each grade level, and so on. So what they do is they take those things that are going to go towards our district vision, and put it all on a piece of paper, we'll say, for lack of a better term. At that point, there is a certain amount that's given to us by the city to be able to work with that. A lot of stuff is mandated, so things that are on that list are really just things that have to be, special ed being one of those, transportation, and so on. But what happens is we get a lot of requests for newer programming and things like that. We'd love to have all of it, but at that point, it would be a very high percentage. And we know that typically we're not going to be able to get that. So we kind of start whittling it down when we start having through the finance subcommittee. So we have salaries, which are set at a certain amount, of course. Like I said, I mentioned the special ed. And we try to get as much as we can. But, we want the system to be as good as it can be, and obviously as great as it can be in the state. The problem is, of course, there's only so much. Well, it's only so much money that a city can afford for all their departments, the school being the biggest department as well. And I think coming up is Matt Crowley, the superintendent, to speak as well. But our goal is to make it the best system we can with what we're given for the money and what we've, able to use for different programming and so on. So it's always a challenge.
Where are the places that the community can and should get involved in speaking, just listening? Like, I know we have lots of public meetings, and one of the things that we know is that there isn't as much public involvement across our community, not just from the school system, but sort of across the community and lots of things that happen. So I'd love to help people understand where they can participate.
Sure. I mean, we got a lot of people that email me as chair, but the school committee as a whole, and then the superintendent, I'm sure, gets his amount as well. What happens is, again, these requests come in, or suggestions and so on. We take all of it, and we take all of it, and we kind of look at what we have in the budget, what programming and so on, and what will work. For example, a good example would be physical education twice a week. It's been a hot topic for a while. We would love to have that. Where I think it might be in the budget, and initially, when I say that, meaning it's one of the line items we're going to try our best to keep in there. It definitely goes pretty far, helping with mental health issues and getting kids out of the classroom, running around, kind of just working out their anxieties, if nothing more, from the day. But basically, when people send emails, we do take into consideration the best we can. Obviously, it leaves us, and we're only given a certain amount, like I said, from the city side. So obviously, probably the city side more so, to really kind of stress certain programming as well as certain amounts. So nothing, we're just kind of working with what we hope can be passed, but of course it all comes down to the final numbers that we're given and what we can work with. So there is a process to it, and it It would be nice just to say, here's what we need, and thank you very much, and write a check from the city. It just doesn't always happen that way, unfortunately. But the city's been very good, and it might take a year or two for some of the program that we'd love to have. And being on it for a while, the school committee for a while, a little patience is always good. But sometimes things, the parents, and I understand why. My kids went through the system, and been on the school committee a while. I understand it. So probably talking in a sense to the mayor, sending letters there and saying, please, fund as much of the budget as possible. Because like I said, it's out of our control, on how much we get. And that's part of the battle every year.
Well, thank you, Chris, so much for joining us and for taking on the role of chair. Next up, we have Superintendent Matt Crowley.
Hi, Samantha.
I'm so glad to see you here. Now, we have a lot of important things to talk about today, but we are going to talk about the thing that is most on everyone's mind. We are taping on Monday evening, which means we think there's a storm coming tomorrow. So I want to get inside your head, Matt, because you have the terrible job of deciding about whether we have school or not and when to make that call. So tell us a little bit about the process you go through to make that determination.
Sure. First of all, I don't do it independently. I'm working, I just recently was within the last hour on a phone call with the chief of police. I work with the DPW and City Hall. And of course, Dave Dunkley, who's our facilities director. And we all kind of collaborate to make sure that we're making the best decision for the safety of all. And then full disclosure, I'm also in contact with area superintendents so that we are hearing and saying as much as possible the same thing. Everyone obviously makes their own decision at the end of the day as far as other cities and towns. But some cities and towns don't have as many kids walking. Some cities and towns don't have kids on buses, etc. So there's a bunch of variables that go into it. And what we're doing really is trying to make sure that everyone is safe when they come to school. And I say that ironically today, and I thought about this morning. Today is the 3rd anniversary of Friday the 13th when we shut down because of COVID. And safety has meant so many different things to us over the last 3 years that school closure absolutely is a safety concern. But when you think about what we've been through over the past 3 years, as it relates to safety for everybody, it's really been, a constant state of flux. And we're always going to try to make the best decision for everybody to keep them safe. So, I don't have any special weather app or, I'm watching the weather the same as everybody else. I prefer to make a decision as soon as I can. I think out of respect to families for planning purposes. Right now, I'm looking at it. It's supposed to be raining tonight. And then into the morning. So I'm not sure that I can make a decision tonight, candidly. And so by the time this airs, you'll probably know what the decision is. But again, that's in a nutshell how the sausage gets made, if you will.
Yeah, it's not easy. And I know we're also working with unusual circumstances, trying to finish up before the end of June and not add any more days, which I know you would not compromise safety for that reason, but that is definitely, I'm sure, weighing in everybody's minds when the last day of school will be.
No, that's true. I think right now the last day of school is scheduled for June 29th, I believe. So, we're really cognizant of that. But again, safety is the number one priority, and it has been and always will be.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for giving us an inside look at the not so fun decisions that have to get made there. I know that, we are back to school after a challenging week of strikes. I'm sure everyone who work in the schools are really happy to be back. I know that's where everybody always wanted to be. Tell us in general sort of how the sentiment is across the schools and students and teachers coming back together.
Yeah, I mean, I would tell you that everyone's excited to be back in school. It's almost the equivalent of coming back in after COVID. The magic happens in the classroom, and I think everybody plays a factor in that. So the kids are back in and happy. The staff are doing their jobs and doing them well. And so, you know, I do think that it's never ideal to have any gap in learning, but you know, everyone is doing a great job, and I'm appreciative of the teachers, the nurses, the parents, the secretary. Everyone's, you know, we're doing everything we can for the kids in Woburn.
I love it. One of the things that we know we've talked about in the past is that there were some open positions that needed to be filled, and I'm sure there will be going into next year as well. Are there particular areas of staffing that you're focused on to make sure we get addressed over the summer, and in general, how are we getting ready for next year? Because, you know, the students get out on June 29th, hopefully, right? And the teachers get out a day or two after, whatever that is. But school planning and work doesn't stop, right? There's all kinds of things that continue to happen to make sure everybody goes back and has a great beginning of the school year.
So actually, it's tied to the question you asked Chris about budget. And, you know, we know that there's certain positions that are open because of retirement. So we will seek to post those as soon as possible. There are other positions that we know. For example, I can speak. Steve Martin is the interim principal at the high school, and we're actively in process now for a candidate, you know, replacement candidate there. But really, the active hiring season for us in Woburn is late spring and into the summer. And I think we've done a really good job of attending virtual recruitment fairs is how we've been doing it these days. Woburn does enjoy a good, strong reputation of trying to recruit and retain high quality educators. And so I think you know, we actually on this side work almost more during the summer, getting things ready for September. You know, it's this misnomer that the summer is nice and relaxed. But again, part of to your point or question, we still have open positions. We still have a lot of paraprofessional positions that just remain vacant. You know, I'm very grateful that we're able to raise the rate of pay for them, well deserved, and so hopefully that we're able to attract people to these positions. Public education is a challenge right now for a lot of reasons, and I think that you know, it probably will continue in that way, but we also have a partnership with Endicott College. We have fellows, student teachers. So, you know, we trying to develop relationships with students that come to work with us or want to become employees and so forth. We have an ongoing dialogue with UMass Lowell. We're going to be able to run a partnership with them next year with their biotech program at the high school. So students will have exposure to UMass Lowell professors. But part of it, and it's not done yet, but is to try to develop a partnership with student teachers from Lowell to work with us and to have our students be exposed to what life at UMass Lowell looks like, so that they may want to come back and be teachers, you know. So a lot of different ways to think about it.
I love it. That's really great news. I love exposing students to new things and new ways of thinking and learning. So that's fantastic. The last question I wanted to ask you about was, you know, one of the things that we saw very recently because of the strike and its after effects is a lot of community involvement, far more than we've seen in a long time, of people who want to advocate for their students and their families. And that can be a very powerful force, right? When you've got lots of people who want to help. What are some of the ways that the schools, or just us in general as a community, to keep positive advocacy up and help families stay connected to the schools that their students go to?
Yeah, no, well, let me answer a couple. Woburn, the community in Woburn's amazing, always has been, and you know, I think it's really a tribute to the people that live here and care deeply about each other. And so a lot of the educators live here, and so, you know, you don't have to ask people to go the extra mile. They do because they're committed. And so the community support always has been great. As far as ongoing advocacy, I think what I would suggest is, and Chris Kisiel alluded to it, the meetings are, the school committee meetings, there's room for public comment. If people wanted to come and participate in public comment, they can email the school committee and so forth. But at the school level, we have such great programs people may not know about and ways to contribute. So the one that people would know about is the Tanner Closet at the high school, and they actively seek donations all the time. And so anytime people want to contribute anything, the Tanner Closet is a place to go. And we're headed into prom season. People will donate old prom dresses or tuxedos, food. I mean, there's no shortage of generosity. And so each and every school has slightly different programming. And I'm sure that if anyone contacted the principal, they would be able to tell you specifically what the needs of their school would be. And that's the way I would think to best make an immediate difference.
Fantastic, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. We've had a wonderful conversation today about a lot of important educational things in our community and how we can continue to support our schools and the important work that they do to keep our students learning and moving forward.
Thank you, Samantha. Thanks for having me.
Next up, I'm really excited because we have our one of our other mayoral candidates, Omar Mohuddin, whose last name I hope I did justice to.
Yes.
Welcome, Omar. Thank you for making the time to chat with us.
Oh, of course. It's my pleasure.
I'm really, first of all, congratulations, because running for mayor, regardless of the outcome of the race, is a big accomplishment, achievement, and a lot of work, I know, that you have ahead of you. Tell us what motivated you to put your name in the race.
So it dates back to about November. There was a mayor election in Arkansas, just a little north of Little Rock. And the winner of that election was Jalen Smith. He was 18 years old when he got elected. And I kind of thought that was like mind-blowing. And when I've always been really big on kind of promoting change and making sure we don't just stick with the status quo because it is a status quo. When I graduated from Woburn High, I kind of lost the impact that I could have been having while I was within the school system. But when I saw him get elected, I realized that it was possible to still make change. I looked at Woburn's criteria for running for mayor, and I found out that's the same here. You can be 18, and I kind of saw it as an opportunity to get my voice out and put my best foot forward. So I thought this would be something that I could do effectively, and I really wanted to do. I was passionate about it.
That's great. So one of the things that I'm excited about having you run is that we have the opportunity potentially reach a lot of younger voters who don't show up at the polls very often. It's an unfortunate reality that in Woburn, like much of the state, I don't think this is a Woburn thing, but it certainly is true in our community that a lot of our newer, younger voters just don't come have their voice be heard. And having a candidate like yourself run could potentially help bring that out. Tell us a little bit about how we just in general as a city should be doing a better job of engaging people, of all different ages, but particularly folks who might be in their, your age, in their early 20s, folks who might not, have families yet, folks who might not yet be deep into their careers and professions.
Definitely, yeah. So like I said, when I found out it was like 18 years old, was like a minimum, was new to me because no one ever talks about it. So I feel like the first step is sort of educating. And I realize now whether, like you said, whether the outcome I win or lose, I'm still getting the opportunity to educate, because now I've had people coming up to me and being like, hey, I didn't even know you could do this at 18. And it's like, yeah, me neither, up until like pretty recently. I'm 19 now, but I still think it's just something that people need to be taught, because like we're taught about Patrick Henry, James Otis, Samuel Adams, the founding fathers talking about no taxation without representation, but we don't really expand upon that. Like once we're 18, like you're paying taxes, you're basically paying for a right to vote, and you're not taking advantage of that. So you're paying, but you're not getting your value. So I think allowing people to understand like the impact of it and the numbers, because the youth of Woburn are pretty, like people who can vote under 30, between 18 and 30, a pretty big group. And I think if we were to utilize that and see that there's opportunity there, people would take advantage of it. So I think it's kind of like considering the youth as people of the city as well, instead of just kind of putting it aside and like letting everything play out as it play out. I think it's better if we just educate.
I think that's a great motivation. We, you know, what we have a tradition in my house when you're on your 18th birthday, whenever the next, you know, day is, if it happens to fall on a weekend, mom takes you to go register to vote. It's like, you know, you get your presents and then we go register to vote, right? Because I do think it's a unique opportunity for us and an important one. You are clearly ambitious and smart and driven, and many of the important qualities we need in leaders, from everything I've heard from everyone. And what little, we haven't had a chance to talk a lot yet, but from what I'm reading and seeing. But the mayor's job is really time consuming. And, you know, in some communities it's different in others. Woburn it is definitely a full-time plus job. And there's a lot of engagement and a lot of things. How do you balance that at 19 with, are you staying in school? Will you not stay in school? Like, how do you envision all of the things happening?
I feel like that's been questions from every single person I've spoken to. And every now and then someone will be like, oh, are you dropping out of school? And I think every time someone says that, my mom's heart stops. Like, she gets, you can't hear that. But no, so two big things. So number one is Northeastern's co-op program. And what it is, for people who might not know, is that you don't go to school during this co-op program. Northeastern wants you to have work experience by the time you actually get your degree and graduate. So most students take 1 year off of school to work full time. Some do more, some do less, but it's a minimum of 6 months, but most people do a year. And with Northeastern, I've already spoken with the people that I need to on their board and agreed that were I to get elected, that would be my co-op, which is kind of crazy, people that like mayor is a co-op, but
that would be a talk, that would be definitely setting the bar high for your fellow students.
Yeah. But combining that with, even though I graduated Woburn High in June, what I did was, from there, while I was in the process of graduating from high school, I was just grinding courses for college. And so I stacked it up. And by the time where I had to get elected to enter office in January 2024, I'd only have about 8 more courses to finish up before I get my degree. So it would have been about like 2 years getting my undergrad. But combining that with the co-op, I won't have to balance like the mayor and school. So that's kind of been a question, and everyone's been wondering. So no, there's no balancing. It's just going to be co-op, focus on the mayor, and then sprinkle in a class like towards the end of the co-op, and as I kind of get used to it.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, with all of us. We appreciate that. You know, one of the things that's really important from a mayor in the city is proposing and overseeing the city budget, which has lots of moving parts. Those who watch this show regularly know we talk a lot about the pieces and parts of it. From your perspective and what you'd like to see happen, what are yours? What would be your spending priorities?
So I think it's important to first gather input from like the community, city officials, and other stakeholders, as I call them, to understand kind of like the most pressing needs and priorities of the city. But from there, I think I would prioritize public safety, education, infrastructure, and economic development. Because as much as it'd be nice to just kind of throw money here, give everybody money, give everybody this, it's not as simple as that, obviously. But it would also mean to me investing in sustainable and equitable growth. And examples of that would be like educational training, kind of like I mentioned with like voter rights and how all that goes into play, and community engagement empowerment. Because if we can involve more of the community, kind of get Woburn to be that close-knit community that it can be, I think that'd be a huge like plus. And I think ultimately the goal would be to create a balanced budget that meets the needs of the community and sets us on a prosperous path.
One of the things that our current mayor has spoken a lot about, Prides, has done some good, you know, I think by all accounts is a good thing. I think lots of people differ in how it gets applied, is that financially we do have a good cash position, and we are in a city who's, you know, not in a desperate need. When you look at that type of fiscal responsibility, do you feel like we have been too conservative, not conservative enough? Kind of, you know, where is that balance between current need and sort of safety net, I guess I would describe it as?
Yeah, so I mean, Mayor Galvin did get Woburn its first AAA bond rating for the city, and that was definitely huge. It's like a stepping stone of what the city could become in the future. It kind of like lets us stand on who we are, like rating wise, kind of like credit score. In regards to whether it's too conservative or not, I think that kind of differs on what the end goal is and like long-term path for Woburn. I think that there might be space to improve on needs now instead of kind of holding back funding and dealing with it on the back end a couple years down the road. I think a good example of that would be sort of like the teacher strike. I think obviously that's a hot topic, and that's something that kind of isn't just an immediate thing. Everyone isn't just like, okay, we're going to strike right now today. It's something that gets built up, and it's something that could have kind of been worked on in the past with slow increments of kind of satisfaction. But if you just hold off and push everything aside, I think it takes a bigger chunk out of your savings, perhaps, down the road.
Good. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think what I heard, and I want you to tell me where I'm right, is, sort of going into planning. Obviously, you need a balanced budget, given you've said that makes complete sense.
Sure.
But sort of the philosophy around this is to look for opportunities. If delaying spending doesn't always save us money. And
Correct.
So, to sort of try and find that balance between sort of the needs investment now and how that feeds into the long term. Is that
exactly,
fair?
Yeah, that is perfect. Yeah.
Okay, good, great. You're making me work my old economics hat from my degree in economics. Haven't used it in a long time, but
Okay.
On your website, you call out two groups as priorities and initiatives: first responders and teachers, both clearly important parts of our community. Tell us a little bit about why those two groups are so important and why you emphasize those as some of the first communications you've shared.
I see those two groups, they basically shape the city, right? And the future as well. I think, especially looking at educators, not only just teachers, but also administrators, everyone that works within the Woburn school systems, huge. For me, especially, they paved the road. And I don't think I'd be sitting right here on an interview with you about like running for mayor if it weren't for my educators, right? I had a close relationship with all the principals that I've went through schools with, Mr. Wells, the Linscott, Mr. Battle, Mr. Nelson at the Kennedy, and Mr. Martin and Ms. Callanan at the Woburn High School. And paying attention to those sort of teachers makes you realize that we see those people this like number two amount of times, like the second most amount of time anybody else, right? Like we're there 6 hours a day, Monday through Friday, 180 days a year. And they have an impact, right? Like everyone can speak on some sort of interaction they've had with the teacher. And I think giving those educators the resources and supplies that they need to do their job the best way they can only empowers us as the city. And when you look at first responders, as soon as those students leave the walls of the school system, they're going to go home to their neighborhoods. They're going to go home and hopefully have the resources and understanding that they're safe, right? Woburn's always been a super safe place. Like I just came back from the airport and it's like 3 a.m. and I can confidently walk with my luggage in my hand down the street, go into my household and not have to worry about it. But God forbid, were something to happen, you want to make sure that you have sort of like the resources and the availability of the first responders and the aid. And I think that those two groups kind of structure and hold together the city in a way that you can really emphasize, you can see it. Like the better that the school systems are, usually better that the kind of like economic future of the city may be. Because a lot of people from Woburn High come back to Woburn to live here. And that kind of stems from jobs and their degree and where they go to school. And I think it all comes down back to schooling and safety.
Both really important things for sure. What you raised an interesting point, which is that people come back to, that's a sign of a great community when people want to come back.
Yeah.
I know I would like all my adult babies to stay or to come back. But housing is a challenge, right? We've seen some pretty dramatic increases in average rents and home values for homeowners. That's not a bad thing. But for folks who haven't yet bought a home or who are renters, it can be a challenging environment. Like much of the state, there's big statewide initiatives to increase housing across our community, and we're growing organically. And so that means we're going to have, a lot of new people come to our community and hopefully folks returning who are familiar with it.
Mhm.
You know, what is the role of the city and how do we prepare the city to make sure that we can provide a good community environment and the services needed to sustain growth?
Okay, yeah. So I think that also ties in with people struggling with housing insecurity. So
Mhm.
to kind of address both of those in a broad kind of answer, I think working to increase the city's housing supply through responsible zoning, partnerships with developers, and utilization of affordable housing incentives. I think that might be something that would not only bring in more sort of housing, but also make sure that we're not like New York City, just trampling and stacking buildings and kind of all of a sudden you have everything crowded and we're living in a grid. So I think it avoids that, but it also allows for space coming in. But we would also need to look at um, priority for organizations that support people struggling with housing security by increasing funding and expanding access to services in Woburn. And by doing that, you kind of make it essential that everyone in Woburn has access to safe, secure, and affordable housing without feeling like their backyard is owned by their neighbor and it's just kind of hectic.
Yeah, it's a complex issue. I know, and there's a lot of moving parts. And I think you
Mhm.
raise an important part about lots of people in the city coming together. And
Yeah.
the mayor's role is to help make that happen. You talk, I think you spoke about, you know, not accepting the status quo. And there are certainly good things in our community that we want to maintain, and there are things that need to change. When you think about the things that you want to hold dear and hold on to about Woburn, what are some of the things that come to mind?
So when I look at Woburn, and I mean, I spent some time in Boston because of schooling, and it's a huge difference. Um, and it kind of made me realize that sometimes we take it for granted what Woburn has to offer with the idea that it's a close-knit community. And I mean, I didn't live here 60 years ago, but I think around that time, it was a much closer community. And, you know, everyone knew everybody else. Now with Woburn changing and developing and growing, it's much harder, but I think there's no need to move away from that. We could still move towards it and make sure we build sort of that community bond. So I think that'd be something that'd be a priority for me, looking at infrastructure and investments that would benefit our community for years to come, right? Like a community center. Some cities have those, and it's just kind of, we have the Boys and Girls Club for sure, but just sort of like a owned by the city public community center that everyone can kind of rely on for all sorts of things, like um, a hangout spot for teenagers, but also an area for resources for adults and younger parents coming into Woburn. And I think making Woburn that community that I definitely know it could be is something that would be on the front runner of my mind.
Great. And what are some of the things that are important, do you think, for us to question and to reevaluate and look at changing?
In what regard?
Just in, you know, one of the things you talk about is, you know, not, you know, we shouldn't just do things the way we're doing them because that's the way we've always done them, and that
Yeah.
you expressed a desire to time for some change. What are some of the things that you would bring to this role that would take us in a positive new direction?
I think we're at to look at sort of like citizens, how it affects citizens, or do you mean
Just in general,
like
how you
within?
run the city differently than how we run it today?
Okay. I think there needs to be a little bit more kind of commitment to listening to the needs and concerns of all members of the community and working collaboratively to make positive changes happen. Because I understand it's not as easy as just saying, yes, I'll do this for you. Yes, I'll do this for you. But I think there's no harm in sort of listening, hearing out, seeing what's going on. And I'm not saying every city official is like that. I've definitely met with some that have been super helpful and awesome going back and forth with. But I think it's just as a whole, I know a lot of students, especially like younger people, they don't think that they can just like call up someone that's their city councilor and be like, hey, I want to talk about this. There's a problem here. Um, so I guess it kind of comes back to educating, just making sure people know and making sure people are aware of what's going on with the city, what resources they have access to, what they can do to shape the community that they want.
I love community involvement in all the ways, because I think it just makes it better in so many ways. It gives us creative solutions. It allows us to
Definitely.
do things that we might find difficult otherwise, and just be there for each
Mhm.
other.
Yeah.
For those people who know you best, your friends, your family, what would they say are your strengths?
Strengths. I'd say they definitely would say I'm passionate. Once I'm fixated on something, it's a done deal. And that does sometimes go on the back end as well. Like I can stay on it and like it'll be like a week past and I'm still on it. So I guess somewhat stubborn, somewhat tenacious, but I'd say passion, right? Like I'm very passionate about this and I've kind of made it my day to day. Every single time I'm talking to someone, it manages to come up and it's just constant. So I'd say my passion and the drive that I carry is just the constant hunger that I want.
I imagine bringing that passion and hunger to the folks who lead our city and run the city day to day is a part of what you would instill in others.
Yeah.
When you look at the mayoral job, there isn't a single person who ever, no matter how many years experience you have, no matter what you have done in the past, no one person can know all about our city and all aspects of it. That's why you have department heads. That's why you hire experts, all the things that go in there. But what is it that you would feel that you would want to focus on learning between now and taking office that would best prepare you for taking on these new responsibilities?
That's a good question. I think what sometimes goes over a lot of people's head is that I can sit here right now and answer all these questions to you, and you can ask them, and interviews over, done deal. But at the end of the day, until you're within the seat that right now Mayor Galvin holds, you can't fully understand and encompass what's going on. I obviously every single day I learn something new, right, in regards to the mayor's office, but just everyday life. And something that I want to really kind of zero in on is if I could get like a fly on the wall Monday through Friday, Mayor Galvin's office. I want to see what happens, the functions, the interactions. What is his day to day? What is the role like? Because sometimes I feel like I can only find so much information through websites and information talking to people, but I think the best thing would be to actually see what's going on day to day. I've spoken with other mayors outside of Woburn, and everyone kind of has a different situation going on. So I'd love to see and learn about what it is, the seat, like the role, day to day, what's happening, what's going on, who are we meeting with, and yeah, just kind of understanding.
One of the things that I know you can do and probably have already started to do more of is, go to school committee meetings, sit in on city councils, sort of all the public things that happen. From the things that you have observed, either in the context of the mayoral race or just in the context of, I think you're part of Embrace Club, and I know you've been involved in the community in other ways. What are some of the communication things and the way we do things today that you feel works really well, and where are some of the places that you would like to either learn more about or feel like there's room for improvement?
So I think right now what works well is the idea that anyone can come to any of these public meetings that you just mentioned. But what doesn't actually happen when you apply it, people don't show up, right? You go to school committee meetings and you have max like 6 people sitting there. And for all we could have 1,000 people up in there. But what happens is people don't know that. People don't realize that. And that's just circles back. But I think what the idea that we have is that anyone can come to these meetings. They're posted on woburn.gov. You can go whenever you want. People should take advantage of that. Like understand what's happening, why it happens, instead of opening your phone, seeing an email from Woburn Public Schools. Oh, this is happening. Why is it happening? Well, if you were at the last meeting, you see what's going on. But no one really tells us that. No one kind of puts it on blast, which isn't anyone's fault, right? Like it's not on the school committee members to tell every single citizen of Woburn, you should be at the next meeting. But it's just the idea that we have this opportunity, we're not taking advantage of it, and we should. But I can't speak on what happens behind closed doors. So how the mayor interacts with the certain other offices, I'm not sure. But were I to be elected, I'd want to establish a more regular communication and collaboration between the mayor's office and the other functions that we mentioned to make sure that the needs and wants that are brought up to me and brought up to these discussions are addressed between us. Because the mayor doesn't sit in on the city council board, he doesn't sit on the school committee, but the school committee can see everyone that comes to school committee, city council sees everyone that comes to city council, and just kind of bring it all together and seeing what's going on with everyone's kind of branch, as if you want to look at it like the US government branches, right? Just kind of making sure everyone works together and seeing what's going on.
Great. I think the cross-functional collaboration is always really important. So what do you want voters to know about you, about what's happening next in your campaign, about your, your ambitions to be mayor?
So this is like a shout out time for myself.
Yeah, this is the time, this is your brag moment. This is the point where I want you to tell us, with all sincerity, really, why you feel like you can do this job, what you're going to be doing to reach out to the community, and how people can follow up with you if they'd like to stay connected to your campaign.
So if we're looking at the business aspect of things, I'd like to mention that I've been working within finance for the last 3 years, within the banking system. And as well as that, for the last year, I've been cramming more business courses and more business practicum than anyone else can really say. So I've had plenty of like balance sheets, income statements all across my brain every day for the last 8 months. So when people ask what experience do you have with the mayor's office, I'm going to tell you zero, because I don't have any experience with the mayor's office, but neither did anybody else before they got elected mayor. But I definitely have experience with budgeting, within kind of being financially stable myself, managing my time with school and this, and management on my own end is definitely one of my, I'd say, strengths. And looking at the political side of things, I think I'd want to brag about the team that I kind of have working with me, made up entirely of youth, right? There's not one person, with the exception of my treasurer, who's above the age of 25 years old. And I think that's kind of a statement as to what type of power the youth has, right? Like I can get together all these kids and we can have, win or lose, an impact on the city. Shows that we have that power, we have the ability to get active. And so if this is like a shout out to any students, any kids who are watching, or any parents, come my way. I will find a role for every single student who wants to get involved, right? I think it's rare to have on your resume, whether you're applying to college or you're in college, to have on your resume that you participated in a mayoral campaign when you were 16, 17, 18 years old. And I kind of want to make sure that the youth knows how much power we hold, right? Like a lot of people tell us oh, you guys are the future, you guys are the future, you guys are the future. But right now it's the present, right? Like we can put our foot down and say, okay, we're 18 years old now. We can run for positions. We can vote for positions. We have a say in the city that we live in now, and kind of go from there. And hopefully, if you want to check out my website, a lot of information's on there. It's omarformayor.com. Keep it simple. On Instagram, it's Omar for Mayor. Yeah, I definitely want people to check those things out.
I love it. And I think people should check those places out, learn more, stay connected. I have one last question for you. And that is, maybe this is sort of an insight into who you are as a human being, that you didn't decide to first run for school committee or be on a board or run for city council. You're like, I'm in, I'm mayor, I'm going for mayor. And I say it with a smile, but I think it's a bold choice, right? To come in and say that if we're going to make change, I'm going to make change in this big, important, very central way. Tell us a little bit about why you made a decision to do that.
Yeah, I mean, go big or go home. But I don't believe that there's one size fits all in regards to the roadmap to politics, right? We've seen it. I can't speak on previous mayors of Woburn, but it's not entirely unprecedented in regards to executive roles. I mean, there's 2 major presidents who entered the Oval Office with zero political experience. Regardless of how you feel about Donald Trump, he did enter office, right? No political experience. Dwight Eisenhower, same case. And he created the interstate highway that we're using right now. Every single morning, every single day, using his highway system, and he had no experience entering office. I think it's a matter of school committee has their roles, city council has their roles, and so does mayor. I think the mayor's responsibilities, being a leader and holding an executive role, of all these branches is something that I find myself being able to do. And bringing fresh ideas to the office and engaging youth and engaging the community is something that I can do where I wouldn't be able to have that in school committee or in city council. And so for some people, starting with city council and moving up is their move. Some people start school committee, move up. Some people start school committee and finish school committee. I think that's not the road that I want to take. I don't think there's one road that everyone has to take. And for me, it's going to be not starting with those two and going to the mayor's office. And so I think people can see how like the leadership is a different sort of skill that I bring in regards to what I can do and lead with department heads and city council and school committee instead of starting there, building up my resume and kind of moving up.
Well, you said the status quo isn't always the right thing to do. So I like that. What are you studying in school?
So right now I'm business administration, and then I have a concentration in finance.
Great. Awesome. Omar, thank you so much for joining us. We will definitely have you come back on as we get closer to elections and all the official papers get pulled and all those things. So please stay in touch with us and we'll be in touch. But I'm so grateful for your time because I think it's really important that we as a community get an opportunity to meet all of our candidates and give them an opportunity for us to get to know them. Woburn, as always, please continue to take good care of each other.